David Muir interviewed Donald Trump, and while they talked about a number of things, including building that big, beautiful wall along the Mexican border, they also discussed a topic that Donald Trump just refuses to let go. The size of the inauguration crowd, the number of people who came to watch him get sworn in. Now, at this point, I feel like we should all move on. Why is this an issue? Why is he so obsessed with this? But he's obsessed with proving that he's popular because he's an insecure man. Now, if you don't believe me, take a look at this video where Trump talks to Muir about just how gigantic the crowds were.
Part of my whole victory was that the men and women of this country who have been forgotten will never be forgotten again. Part of that is when they try and demean me unfairly, because we had a massive crowd of people. We had a crowd. I looked over that sea of people and I said to myself, wow. And I've seen crowds before, big crowds. That was some crowd. When I looked at the numbers that happened to come in from all of the various sources, we had the biggest audience in the history of inaugural speeches. I won't allow you or other people like you to demean that crowd and to demean the people that came to Washington, D.C. from faraway places because they like me.
That was insane. So, look, just a fact check, and you guys already know, but just in case, in that statement, he said it was the largest crowd in history. Okay, there were 250,000 people in that crowd. Obama's first inauguration had 1.8 million. His second inauguration had 1 million. That was not the largest crowd. It was actually a visibly obvious small crowd.
Yeah, small crowd. And this is now like almost a week later. Muir didn't bring it up. Trump brought it up. And who says things like, they really like me? That's embarrassing, dude. He said, when you look at this tremendous sea of love, who talks about a sea of love for himself? I'll tell you who. Kim Jong-il, okay? That's who talks about it.
It's very creepy. And it's, look, right now there's chaos in the State Department because top-level officials left, right? The most experienced members of our State Department left. And so they have to find people to fill those positions. And he's sitting there talking about crowd sizes. It's absurd. And by the way, if you thought that was crazy, take a look at this next video where he takes Muir on a tour of photos that are already up on the White House walls. Take a look.
Here's a picture of the event. Here's a picture of the crowd. Now, the audience was the biggest ever, but this crowd was massive. Look how far back it goes. This crowd was massive. And I would actually take that camera and take your time if you want to know the truth.
Did he do it again?
Oh, he did it again. Take a look.
Another one.
And just before we leave, the president tells us he wants to show us just one more image.
One thing this shows is how far over they go here. Look how far this is. This goes all the way down here, all the way down. Nobody sees that. You don't see that in the pictures. But when you look at this tremendous sea of love, I call it a sea of love, it's really something special that all these people traveled here from all parts of the country, maybe the world, but all parts of the country. Hard for them to get here. And they loved what I had to say.
At this point, but here's the thing. At this point, I just want him to not talk about this anymore and focus on more important things. So let's just all tell him that, yeah, you had the largest crowd in American history.
No, Donald, you are so large.
It's so big, Donald. It's gigantic.
It's bigly. It's bigly. It's tremendous.
Oh
okay. So now imagine for 1 second, Obama, after he was inaugurated, took a reporter on a tour of the White House, kept showing him his crowds and saying, there was a sea of love for me. Remember how Rush Limbaugh and Fox News used to say, oh, he's a celebrity and he's so obsessed with himself because he gave a speech in Denver where there were some Roman columns next to him and what does he think he is and stuff. Imagine if he said, there's a sea of love for me. They love what I had to say.
No,
but Obama would never say that.
No. Please allow me to juxtapose this with something Obama did that was justified and people lost their minds. I wish I remember which state it was. Maybe you'll remember. Jake and I did a story about a small town that was suffering economically under the Bush administration. Obama comes in and, because of a large part of his economic policies, this small town starts to thrive again. They're all of a sudden, the business in that town, and I believe it was automobile companies.
It was auto parts. It was in Indiana.
Indiana, okay.
And so since he had revived the auto industry, but specifically the parts that they sold in that town, the unemployment went from I think around 13%. We're doing this from memory, obviously, to around like under 5%. They added all these, not only regained the jobs, but added jobs in that town.
Yeah, so the economy is booming in this particular area. In fact, they don't have enough time to fill all the orders that they're getting, right? So you would think, oh, they're happy because of these policies that have obviously worked. Obama goes and he gives a speech in that small town, and they're livid because Obama took some credit for some of his economic policies that obviously had a positive effect in the small town. They were livid. They're like, oh, can you believe that he's taking credit for this? But then you have Trump, who can't stop talking about how big his freaking crowds are and how great his speeches are. Where's the criticism from the right? This is insane.
No, look, the right-wing leaders are not leaders. They're sycophants. And so they're never going to stand up to him. To be fair, there was a couple of right-wing bloggers and radio hosts who stood up to him, and that's it. There's a handful, right? So, but his voters matter more. I think voters look at this, and I don't care if, so the deplorables, they're beta males, so they will do whatever the alpha male says. If he says they have big crowds, so Daddy had big crowds. Daddy, he did. Stop saying it, you meanie liberals, right? But I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the half of his voters who thought, well, let's give the guy a shot because we can't stand this system. Those guys look at that and go, what a child. Move on already, for God's sake, about your the size issues, right? Everyone can tell how small your penis is. It's really embarrassing. Please move on. And so I think he's doing more damage than he realizes here. And one is about the crowd size. The other is, it's one thing when you're campaigning. It's another, I'm telling you, that when he keeps saying, I'm the best, I'm the greatest, and he doesn't say it like Ali did with like a wink and a nod, like Muhammad Ali did, right? He says it like earnestly, like, people love me. You're good, but they love me. I'm the best. Midwesterners are those guys in the Rust Belt, the women in the Rust Belt, eventually they're gonna have to avert their eyes like, oh God, it's a train wreck. So look at that. And he's telling us this is the biggest inauguration crowd ever. Dude, we have eyes. We can see. And by the way, so can your voters. Stop embarrassing yourself. He's in for a world of hurt, man. He's never going to let it go. That's who he is. He is that child.
I know he's not going to let it go, which is why, again, this issue, I don't even care about this issue. If we have to lie to him and make him feel good about himself, let's lie to him and make him feel good about himself so he can focus on other things.
And that's the story I did yesterday or 2 days ago, when his own allies and advisors say you have to talk to him carefully.
Right.
Don't talk to him, don't embarrass him in front of others, but pull Donnie aside and you can say to him, hey, Donnie, maybe we should move on. I keep lowering the age. He's a child, man. Really 4 years. We're going to go 4 years of this?
Yep.
Anna, you hinted at it, but think about it. How many days? 5 days?
6.
He's got multiple pictures up of the crowd on the wall, framed, sure, exquisitely. That's part of the work he's been putting in.
No, it's
in his
insane.
first several days in the White House.
It's insane.
We got to get pictures up. We have to get pictures up. They're coming to interview. We got pictures up today of this crowd.
Yeah, so what we really needed was balance. Obama wouldn't market himself if his life depended on it. Well, that's not true. During the campaigns he did. He did a great job during the campaigns. But he wouldn't market Democratic or progressive ideas if his life depended on it while he was president. He would whisper it, okay? So he's on one end of the scale. The other end of the scale is Trump was like, oh, everything of mine is great. My jacket is great. My cufflinks are great. My watch is great. My eyes are great. I'm great. Everybody loves me, right? Can we get somewhere in the middle? Where if you did something that helped the American people, you might want to take credit for it because it's not to help you, but it's to help your policy positions, right? And certainly don't go anywhere near Trump with I'm the best. Can you imagine, again, Bernie Sanders, if he ran that campaign well, hey, I want to tell everybody how great I am. And they said that, oh, well, I don't know, can we risk Bernie Sanders being president? Are you kidding me? If you sign up for TYT membership, you'll be saying,
Thanks a lot, bitch.
TYTnetwork.com/join.